Have you ever had one of those days where the thought of putting on shoes and stepping out the front door just felt like too much? Maybe the weather was fine, your friends were meeting up somewhere, or there was even a community event down the street, but your heart just wasn't in it. You made a cup of tea instead, found your favorite chair, and let the soft hum of your home wrap around you like a warm blanket. If that sounds familiar, let me tell you, you're not alone and there's nothing wrong with you. In fact, more and more people, especially those of us in the second half of life, are discovering that staying home isn't just a choice. It's a kind of nourishment, a way to refill what the world so often drains out of us. Now, some folks will call it being antisocial or slowing down, but I think it's something far more beautiful than that. For many of us, home has become a sacred space, a quiet place where our thoughts get room to stretch, where our bodies can rest without judgment, and where we get to be exactly who we are without having to perform for anyone. Today, I want to talk to you about the people who feel most at peace at home. Not everyone stays in for the same reason, and understanding the difference can be eye-opening. Sometimes it can even help you understand yourself, or someone you love, a little better. Because behind every closed front door, there's a story. And sometimes it's not about what we're avoiding, but what we're protecting. There's a kind of person who didn't always choose to stay home. Life, in many ways, chose for them. Maybe they spent years running on empty, raising kids, working long shifts, putting out fires that never seemed to end. Maybe they've been through hard relationships or careers that took more than they gave. And somewhere along the line, the noise outside began to feel louder than it used to. Harsher, unkind. For these folks, home became the place to finally breathe again. It's not that they dislike people. It's not even that they don't like going out. It's that they've been running for so long, they finally realized they needed a safe harbor. Somewhere they didn't have to be strong all the time. Their home became a shelter, not from people, but from the weight of always needing to be on. You might know someone like this. Or maybe that someone is you. You wake up and the world feels like a fast-moving train you're no longer eager to jump on. Instead, you take the time to move at your own pace. The smell of your own kitchen, the way the light falls on your favorite reading spot, the feel of your favorite cardigan. It's not just comfort. It's healing. Every corner of your home holds a memory or a moment you don't have to explain to anyone. It's yours. And after years of giving yourself to everyone else, it feels good to finally come home. To yourself. There's something deeply powerful in that kind of quiet. But you know what? It's not the only kind of story behind the person who likes staying in. Some of us were simply wired this way from the beginning. The ones who, even as kids, preferred the company of a good book to a crowded party. The ones who never felt the need to be the loudest in the room. The true introverts. Now, don't confuse introversion with shyness or social awkwardness. That's a common misunderstanding. Being an introvert just means you recharge differently. Where some people gain energy from a room full of laughter and conversation, introverts get drained by too much of it. They need quiet to recover, solitude to refuel. Not because they dislike others, but because their minds and hearts operate best in stillness. If you've ever come home from a lovely afternoon with friends and felt completely exhausted, even though you enjoyed yourself, that's the introvert in you speaking up. And there's nothing wrong with that. It just means your battery runs on a different kind of power. The older we get, the more we learn to honor that. To stop pushing ourselves into social boxes that don't fit, and to start building rhythms that do. You might be someone who has learned how to say, "Not today," without guilt. Who has come to value the sound of your own thoughts more than the noise of the world. Who finds joy in simplicity, a crossword puzzle, a gardening afternoon, a slow walk through familiar rooms. And isn't that something to be proud of? Because here's the truth. In a world that constantly tells us to go, do, be more, choosing to rest, choosing peace is an act of strength, not weakness. The person who stays home because they know their limits is not avoiding life. They're living it on their own terms. They've learned how to listen to their inner world and give it the space it needs. That's not lazy, that's wise. Still, even among the people who love being home, not everyone fits neatly into one reason or the other. And some, well, they turn their homes into something more than a place to recharge. For them, home is a playground for the imagination, a workshop for ideas, a stage for creativity. And we'll get into that in just a moment. But before we move forward, I want to pause and ask you something. When was the last time you asked yourself why you love being home? Not just that you do, but what it gives you. Is it protection? Is it freedom? Is it quiet? Or maybe it's the only place where you don't feel like you have to be anyone but yourself. That kind of awareness can be powerful, because the more we understand our own needs, the better we can meet them, without shame, without apology. The truth is, there is no one-size-fits-all when it comes to why people stay in. But there is always meaning behind it. Sometimes that meaning is shaped by the past. Sometimes it's a personality trait that's been there all along. Either way, there's no wrong way to be someone who finds peace within four walls. And if you've ever felt a little odd for not wanting to go out more, if you've ever wondered whether something's wrong with you because you prefer the slow comfort of your own space, let me reassure you right now. You're not broken. You're not missing out. You're simply in touch with something many people spend their whole lives chasing. A sense of peace that doesn't depend on being seen. Now, let's keep going, because the story doesn't stop here. You see, for some people, being home isn't just about rest or retreat. It's about creation. These are the ones who come alive in solitude, not because they're hiding from the world, but because being alone gives them space to imagine, to build, to express something deep inside themselves. I'm talking about the creative spirits, the artists, the writers, the dreamers, and tinkerers who find magic in the quiet corners of their lives. You might recognize yourself here if you've ever found comfort in putting pen to paper, or losing yourself in a sewing project, or planting a garden row by row with more care than most folks would ever notice. Maybe you write stories that no one reads but you, or you compose music in your head while stirring a pot of soup. These things might seem small, even invisible to others, but to you, they're everything. Because for creative people, being home means having the freedom to explore without distraction, without comparison, and without the noise of the outside world telling you what matters. You don't need an audience, you need space, stillness, silence that lets you hear your own thoughts clearly. That's where the ideas come, isn't it? Not in the middle of a crowded room, but in the middle of a quiet afternoon when no one is calling, nothing is urgent, and the world finally leaves you alone long enough to hear the soft knock of inspiration. It doesn't matter whether you've ever considered yourself a creative person. You don't need a title or a gallery wall or a book deal. If you've ever fixed something with your hands, rearranged a room just for the feeling it gave you, or written a letter that came straight from the heart, you're creating. You're building a world from the inside out. And for that, home is not just where the heart is. It's where the art is. Your art. So when people wonder why you'd rather stay home than go to a movie or a noisy restaurant, you might smile and say nothing. Because how do you explain to someone that you're working on something they can't see? That your joy comes not from the crowds, but from the calm, where your mind can wander freely and your hands can bring something new into the world, even if that something is just a well-baked loaf of bread. Still, there's another type of person who finds peace in staying home. Not necessarily because they're tired or because they're introverted or artistic, but simply because the outside world feels like too much. Too loud, too crowded, too chaotic. These are the people who love simplicity, who find joy in quiet routines and calm environments. For them, being home is less about escaping and more about choosing what feels good. If you've ever walked into a packed supermarket or a family gathering and felt your shoulders tense up without even realizing it, you probably understand what I mean. It's not that you dislike people, you might even love them dearly, but the sheer volume of voices, the background noise, the expectations of conversation, it's all a bit much. After a while, it starts to chip away at your peace. And that peace matters, especially as we get older. We start to realize that not every social event is worth our energy, that not every invitation needs a yes. We learn to listen to the little voice inside that says, "I think I'd rather stay home tonight." And we honor that voice instead of pushing past it like we might have done years ago. You might be someone who treasures your morning coffee ritual, who enjoys the quiet sound of your slippers on the floor, who doesn't mind doing a puzzle alone on a Sunday afternoon. That kind of slow, deliberate living, it's not boring, it's beautiful. It means you've figured out what brings you real joy and you've made space for it. But there's something important we need to talk about. All of these reasons, whether it's healing from the past, needing to recharge, expressing creativity, or simply craving calm, they're all valid. They're all part of the human experience. And when they're honored with care and balance, they can be incredibly nourishing. But, and this is a big but, too much time alone, even for the most peace-loving soul, can quietly start turning into something else. Solitude is a gift, but isolation is a risk. And it sneaks up on you slowly. At first, it feels like rest, a break from all the noise. Then days start to blend together. You notice you haven't spoken to anyone outside your house in a while. You start skipping things you used to enjoy, calls from a friend, walks to the store, even small conversations with the mail carrier. You tell yourself you're just tired, that you'll get back to it next week. But somehow, next week never really comes. And without meaning to, you start to drift. Not just from people, but from purpose. You find yourself spending more time thinking than doing, more time reflecting than connecting. And sometimes your thoughts start looping, turning inward until they're not soothing anymore. They're heavy. That's when solitude becomes a trap. That's when the comfort of home starts to feel like a cage. It doesn't happen overnight. And it's not anyone's fault. In fact, it often happens to the kindest, most thoughtful people. The ones who are so good at being self-sufficient that no one realizes they might be feeling alone. The ones who never want to bother anyone, who say, "I'm fine," even when their heart is aching for someone to check in. So let me say this. If you've been feeling a little stuck, a little quiet, a little too tucked away, there's no shame in that. Life pulls us inward sometimes, and we all need periods of retreat. But if the retreat starts lasting too long, if your peace has started feeling a little like loneliness, that's the moment to take a gentle step outward. Not a giant leap, not a party or a plane ride or a big noisy gathering. Just a step, a walk around the block, a phone call to someone who makes you laugh, a trip to the library or the farmer's market, even just sitting on your porch and waving at a neighbor. These little acts, they don't seem like much, but they open the door again. They remind you that you're still part of something bigger, that the world hasn't forgotten you, and more importantly, that you haven't forgotten yourself. Because no matter how much we love our homes, no matter how much we value our time alone, we are human beings, and human beings are wired for connection, even if it's quiet, even if it's just once in a while. A little sunlight, a friendly voice, a reason to get dressed and move. You don't need to change who you are to feel alive again. You don't need to become a social butterfly or go out every weekend. But you do need balance, a rhythm, moments of stillness and moments of motion, a soft place to land and a reason to stretch your wings. Sometimes balance doesn't come in big changes. It comes in gentle adjustments, like opening a window in the morning to let in fresh air and a little bird song. Like putting on real clothes instead of pajamas, even if no one's coming over. Like sitting at the kitchen table instead of the couch for lunch. These tiny shifts, they tell your brain, I'm here, I'm awake, I'm still participating in life. And the truth is, you are. You always have been. Staying home doesn't mean stepping away from life, but staying connected to your own aliveness, that's what makes the difference. The people who thrive at home are the ones who've learned how to listen to their rhythms and respect them, without losing sight of the world outside their walls. Maybe you're someone who enjoys your solitude, but also makes a point to call your grandkids once a week. Maybe you write letters, or attend church online, or wave to the same neighbor every afternoon at 4. Maybe once a month, you go to the same little diner, and the server knows your name and your order. That's not just routine, that's relationship. That's you staying connected in a way that feels right for you. Doesn't have to be loud. Doesn't have to be busy. It just has to be real. And if right now you're listening and thinking, but I don't really have that, I want to say something to you gently but clearly. It's never too late. Not to reconnect. Not to step out again. Not to let someone in. Even if it starts with something as small as writing a comment on this video or saying hello to someone you haven't spoken to in a while, the smallest ember can spark the biggest fire, one that warms your spirit again. There's no shame in loving the comfort of your home. In fact, there's deep wisdom in it. After all the noise, after all the pressure of years spent trying to be everything to everyone else, many of us come to realize that home is where we can finally be ourselves without apology. It's where the masks come off. It's where the truth gets quiet enough to be heard. But even in that quiet truth, we need moments of reflection and redirection. We need to ask ourselves from time to time, am I resting or am I retreating? Am I choosing this space or am I hiding in it? And those questions are not meant to accuse, they're meant to illuminate, to keep us from drifting so far inward that we forget we were built not just for peace, but for purpose. Purpose can look different now than it did in your younger years. It doesn't have to be climbing mountains or running marathons or volunteering every weekend. Sometimes purpose is tending to your home like a garden, slowly and lovingly. Sometimes it's calling an old friend just to check in. Sometimes it's sitting with a journal and writing out what's been sitting in your heart for too long. Purpose is what keeps us reaching forward, even in stillness. It's what reminds us that this chapter of life still matters. That your days are not fillers between the past and the end, but pages still being written, with meaning that's uniquely yours. You may belong to one type more than another, the one who was pushed home by life, the true introvert, the quiet creative, or the person who simply values peace over noise. Or maybe you see yourself in a mix of all four. Most of us do. We're not just one thing. We're layers of experience and choice, shaped by time and softened by seasons. And no matter which type you are, here's what's true across the board. Your home can be a beautiful thing, but it's not a replacement for the life that still wants to meet you. Your home should serve you, not contain you. It should be a place you return to, not the only place you exist. Think about that for a moment. How do you want to exist in this stage of life? Do you want to be tucked away like an old photograph, still beautiful, but forgotten? Or do you want to be like a favorite song, played often, still bringing joy, still part of someone's world? You still have stories to tell, laughter to share, hands to hold. Even if those hands are your own, clasped in prayer, in hope, in gratitude. And here's the best part. You don't have to do anything drastic to feel alive again. You don't have to push yourself into discomfort or pretend to be someone you're not. You just have to open one little window at a time. You just have to let a little life back in, on your terms, at your pace, in ways that make you feel safe and strong and seen. Maybe that means taking a short class at the community center. Maybe it's a video call with someone far away. Maybe it's baking something and giving half of it to a neighbor. Maybe it's sitting outside with your cup of coffee and letting your face meet the morning sun. That's sunlight. That's life touching you gently, saying, "You're still here. You still matter." Because you do. And don't let anyone, including your own inner critic, convince you otherwise. And if you're someone who's felt invisible lately, if you've ever wondered whether anyone would notice if you stopped showing up entirely, please know, your presence still makes a difference, even if it's quiet, even if it's from home. You being here matters. You watching this video matters. You sharing your story, your voice, your thoughts, it all matters. So go ahead, leave a comment below if something here spoke to you. I read every single one, and so do others in this little community we're building together. You never know when your words will be exactly what someone else needed to hear. And if you haven't already, I invite you to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, and turn on notifications so we can keep walking this journey together. We talk a lot about the things that matter here: peace, purpose, connection, and living fully, right where we are. Because life doesn't stop being meaningful just because the world gets quieter. In fact, sometimes it's in the quiet that we finally hear what's been waiting to be heard all along. Your life is still yours, and it's still unfolding in beautiful, brave ways. So whether you're healing, creating, recharging, or just seeking calm in a noisy world, may your home always feel like a place of rest. But may your heart always remember, it was made to beat in rhythm with the world, not separate from it. Here's to the quiet ones, the thoughtful ones, the ones who've made peace their priority. And here's to you, still growing, still showing up, still shining in your own gentle way. You're not fading, you're becoming.